Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Ask Axel Asher what his job is, and he'll tell you, several times, that it is keeping the DC and Marvel universes separate. But curiously, there's been some overlap. He's helped Superman and Spider-Man take down Venom, and played matchmaker for Jubilee and Robin, then took an unscheduled nap courtesy of Two-Face. After Dent was taken down, the three heroes are then besieged by another foe that isn't where he belongs, the Scorpion. Whoever's dropping Marvel villains in DC must be a Spidey fan.
The cover to issue 3 sees Doctor Strange overlooking some of his magical items, an image of Access seen in the green candle smoke, and about to crash through his window is either Batman or a really aggressive trick-or-treater. We begin with Scorpion crouching next to a gargoyle above our heroes, looking all menacing and such, as Access's narration glibly explains the situation. But you can't be a costume villain in Gotham for long before your face meets Batman's foot, as demonstrated on this 2-page spread. Scorpy is given a chance to surrender, and replies to that offer with acid. Bats is prepared for something like that, of course, and counters with the 1-2 punch of Batarang and a punch to the enemy's face. And according to Axel, Bats knew that would work on someone stronger than Spider-Man.
Even though he's never met the Scorpion, certainly didn't see him in the 2 times he's worked with Spider-Man, but of course he can take him down in a couple of hits because
I'm Batman.
Pointed in the direction of an unconscious Two-Face, Batman shows off his amazing multitasking skills by simultaneously tying Harvey up and chiding Robin for taking the killer on alone. Tim tries to explain, but kind of trails off into an apology while Jubilee introduces herself, and Batman just murmurs in reply. Great people skills, this one. He does, however, remember Access, who really needs to invest in some business cards because it's getting tiresome how he can't go 3 pages without reminding everyone he's supposed to keep the universes separate. The world's greatest detective points out how it may not have been the smartest idea to bring a teenager to a different universe, even if it seemed like a good idea at the time, and Axel swears he had nothing to do with Scorpion's sudden appearance, citing the previous anomaly he faced with Venom. I'm aware of who Venom is.
First off, wouldn't it be who Venom are? Secondly, of course you're aware of him. After all, you encountered him in that one panel last year.
I'm Batman.
Access shows off how he's improving with his powers by sending Scorpy back where he belongs, but still needs to find the root cause of these Marvel villains popping up in the wrong universe. For that, he figures he could use the help of a detective. Sure, Superman or Green Lantern are powerhouses more accustomed to matters of the cosmic variety, but Batman is better suited to help find the whats, hows, and whys of the mystery. After a lightning bolt makes him look all somber for some reason, Bats agrees to go to the Marvelverse, where Axel thinks the problem lies. Despite Jubilee's protestations, it's time for her final goodbyes, with at least a little privacy. She tells Tim he's great, because they must have gotten to know each other so well during Versus, and before Two-Face attacked him here. They regret not living in the same universe, of course, and Tim promises he'll think of her, at least until he gets rebooted, and there's a kiss goodbye, just as the wind carries away a flyer for a local production of Romeo and Juliet, because subtlety! What's that? Before they leave, Batman tells his sidekick to wait for Commissioner Gordon to take Two-Face, then call it a night. And Tim wonders what his girlfriend Ari would say about him macking on another girl.
He has a girlfriend, yet he kisses another girl he'll never see again. Yeah, even though some would probably excuse this as Ari will never find out because Tim can't reveal his secret identity, I'm pretty sure this constitutes cheating, even if mildly so. Drake really doesn't look too good in this situation, if you ask me.
Once arriving in Marvel's New York City, Access decides it's time for Jubilee to head home too. Despite their deal about fixing things with Axel's girlfriend Ming, or Lee's experience fighting superpowered baddies, he doesn't want to risk her getting hurt. He's gone long enough for Batman to confuse Black Cat for another cat famed woman he knows, having dropped Jubes at a Westchester mansion, hint hint, and the Bat asks him for any pertinent information about their case, in particular the combined universe. Axel explains how the two realities were amalgamated, and how the only person besides him that knew it wasn't supposed to be like that was Dr. Strangefate, who tried to stop the restoration of the different universes. It's at this point that his memory is sufficiently jogged, recalling an emblem from Strangefate's tower that he saw more recently on Bleecker Street. So naturally, Batman has to make his trademark entrance through Dr. Strange's window, saying the sorcerer threatens both their worlds. Stephen's so offended, he's only going to give him 1 minute to explain himself. Access arrives, further expositing about the Amalgamverse, and that something seems intent on bringing the fused reality back. And given that Strange was half of that world's greatest mystic, it seemed logical that he could be involved somehow, even subconsciously.
Be honest, Doc. Are you sure you haven't been transporting villains across universes in your sleep? I'm sure it happens to everyone.
Despite Asher's apparent sincerity, the Sorcerer Supreme feels he would remember Amalgam, or that his mystic tools would alert him to something like a change in his psyche that would have him do these things. But his word isn't good enough for the Dark Knight, surprise, surprise. Before they can take the former surgeon to the DCU for some mind probes, a yellow glow heralds the arrival of Jubilee, strangely looking like she's pushing 30 all of a sudden, or her DNA got spliced with Joan Rivers. And alongside her are the X-Men: Cyclops, Phoenix, Cannonball, Storm, Bishop, and Iceman.
None of whom can teleport, so how did they get there? On top of recognizing Access when they never met, did Jubilee somehow copy his powers too?
Psyche shuts down Batman's accusation that Strange could be responsible for endangering any universe, but Axel says he could be unaware of the danger somehow. Point apparently taken, as Scott turns to his wife to scan the Doc's mind, once he's given permission and lowered his defenses. Jean witnesses his life as a medical professional, the accident that led him to the mystic arts, triumphs and tragedies, but nothing that seems related to the bigger problem. Access's assuredness that Strange was connected doesn't matter to Cyclops, but it's enough for Batman to defy Bishop's threats to skedaddle. Egged on, the Future Man takes a swing that's a miss, only to be clobbered. Bats tries to take Strange anyway, but is hit with an optic blast. Yet somehow that's not enough to keep him down, because he's still fast enough to dodge Iceman and Storm while Access teleports away. Cannonball tries his hand at the Bat, but even Psyche knew his momentum would be used against him, and, as Jean points out, also taking Storm down with him. Iceman manages to get Bats to lose his footing, saying the X-Men don't usually start fights, but they do finish them.
Well, you kinda started this one. Bishop threw the first punch. Just because Batman's was the first punch to make contact doesn't make this his fault.
Speaking of, he now has a pair of energy weapons trained on Bats, and that's when Axel returns, with the Justice League of America, and Superman ordering the release of his pointy-eared compatriot.
In case you haven't picked up on it yet, Access is really bad at his job.
Issue 4's cover sees him in the background, his shoulder pads apparently becoming a gradient against which the League fights the X-Men. And Cyclops apparently doesn't care a whole lot about Jubilee as he fires a beam right past her at Martian Manhunter. Now that's just negligent right there. We open to an aerial shot outside the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Axel's narration notes his first name is of Danish ancestry. So there goes my theory that his parents were just anticipating what kind of names some people would think would be popular in the 90s. He goes on that he seems to have only made things worse, as a 2-page spread shows him in the middle of 2 teams standing off. Apparently there are a couple of fairies just chilling out as all this goes down. And Bats is face down for some reason when he wasn't before. Anyway, Superman repeats his order, but Bishop isn't following without answers. Not even Cyclops can convince him to give up the tactical advantage of having the Dark Knight pinned. He loses it anyway when Bats kicks him in the gut, and that apparently tells Psyche that there's no other choice now, and as Dr. Strange looks like he's got a migraine going, a big fight breaks out, including previous opponents Storm and Wonder Woman facing off once more. You beat me the first time, but it won't happen again.
You don't have fan voting to save you now.
Axel narrates some of the more relevant points of the last 3 issues as Liger fights X-Man. Good thing he brought just enough DC heroes to keep the numbers even. In the middle of it all, Strange collapses for some unknown reason. Maybe he just got a touch of the vapors. Flash picks up Jubilee, deriding the X-Men for bringing a teenager along with them, until some blinding fireworks stop him in his tracks.
This is Wally West, who was a teen sidekick himself. Heck, he was on the Teen Titans, a team comprised of like-aged sidekicks to famous superheroes. Does Wally have an underlying point, or is the confusion of the whole situation making him a hypocrite?
Cannonball needs more room to maneuver, so he takes his opponent Aquaman outside, crashing into the neighboring Chinese restaurant, startling Ming. When Axel hears her cry out, he teleports to her side. Axel? Axel? Where did you come from? And, wow, why are you dressed like that?
It's the 90s!
They duck into an alley, but Ming won't go any further without an explanation. Over some panels of the various fights, Asher tells her that there are powerful super types in a brawl, and that there's a larger threat he can't elaborate upon, so she has to get going. He can't join her because he's needed, and even has to raise his voice before she'll hightail it. He figures that's the end of their relationship, and as much as he'd like to go after her, he transports back into the sanctum. Jubilee takes him by surprise, and after they take turns blaming each other for the current situation, they realize they don't know how they're going to stop all this. After knocking aside Martian Manhunter, Bishop sees Green Lantern focus an energy construct weapon at Iceman, so he dives to take the blast.
For anyone unfamiliar with Bishop, his powers involve absorbing and redirecting energy. But would that include something from the famed Owen power battery?
Why, yes it does! After knocking Lantern back, Bishop tells Bobby to make sure he stays down while he helps Storm, but Flash puts a kink in that last part of the plan. Cyclops, having hit Bats again with his optic blasts, tells him to rein in his allies so they can work together, but J'onn J'onzz puts Scott in his second full Nelson in this fight, basically saying, "No, you first!" Superman manages to keep Jean from using her psionic abilities by holding her wrists. Not sure how that'd stop a telepath. Anyway, as Jubilee and Access look over Doc Strange, Cannonball, apparently having found his way back indoors with his opponent, throttles Arthur with his own hook cord. Green Lantern blasts Iceman's oncoming attack, turning it into water that is splashed on Aquaman, those few droplets apparently being enough for him to overpower the hayseed.
I think it makes sense that Aquaman would need water to reinvigorate himself. I just think a couple drops helping to turn the tide is asking a bit much. Then again, he is fighting Sam Guthrie, who I don't recall being a heavy hitter around this time. At least not without his propulsion powers.
Trapped in a funky magic room that does a number on perception, Storm begins falling when Wonder Woman lends her a rope line, saying they should choose to be friends regardless of being forced into conflict. That doesn't look like her famous golden lasso, but what else could it be? As Phoenix senses something wrong, 12 panels show everyone's reaction to Doctor Strange beginning to glow, and on a splash page, he has become Doctor Strangefate.
But how? Oh, diagonally. Pretty sneaky comic.
Axel surmises that Amalgam's protector must have hidden within Strange's subconscious, using him to throw people into the wrong universe to re-merge them. And Jean's inability to detect his presence may have stemmed from the fact he's not really of their world. Which sounds odd, but I guess we have to roll with it. Strangefate more or less confirms that he clung to existence until he had the power to banish Doctor Strange and return his fused reality, starting with the Sanctum.
Yeah, there's just one hitch to that. How can he even be here without Dr. Fate? It was him and Dr. Strange that allowed Strange Fate to happen at all. And if you want to say a little piece of Strange Fate stuck to Dr. Strange for some reason, Okay. You want to say he was subconsciously controlling the Doc when he could? Okay. But wouldn't it have made more sense for that subconscious impulse to bring Dr. Fate into the Marvel Universe so they could merge again, like he was doing with the Spidey villains before? As it stands, it seems like they're trying to say, I'm making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but you ain't got the peanut butter.
Aurora and Diana arrive just in time to be remade into Strange Fate's first agent, Amazon, and she's totally willing to do what the Mystic says. This turn of events is enough for Soups to be suddenly welcoming of his former opponents, saying Strange Fate can't stand up to both the League and the X-Men, as he and Bishop charge together. Amazon knocks them both back, giving her apparent master time to make another soldier, even if it's not from the raw materials he'd prefer, changing the two into, I'm going to call him Super Mutant. Strange Fate repeats this on the rest of the heroes, turning them into, let's go with Arctic Man, Flashball, Jean Jones, the Martian Phoenix, the Green Cyclops, and Batgirl.
Okay, that last one was pretty obvious, and chances are they have official names mentioned in the script. But coming up with these was just more fun for me.
With two of his new minions restraining access, Strange Fate decides to finally do away with him to ensure the permanence of the Amalgam Universe. But Axel opts to join Doctor Strange, remembering that this fused mystic said he'd been banished, not killed. But the new environment Axel teleports himself into is unfathomably and nauseatingly bizarre. Not what he'd expected when he focused his mind on the sorcerer at all. A different kind of Cyclops attacks Access, wrecking his slick jacket, the unholy monster, until he instinctively transports it somewhere.
Someone in Wyoming, Pennsylvania is in for a big surprise.
That creature was known as a mindless one, at least according to Doctor Strange's astral form, entangled in some magic vines, I think, as he careens through dimensions while Strange Fate uses his physical body. He couldn't outright kill someone that's a part of him, you know, even though he can exist without the other part. Instead of looking for another mystic, like Strange's suggestion of a shaman, Michael Two Young Men, Axel transports inside the prison, believing Strange Fate was too arrogant to consider his teleportation a threat, and now attempts to return them back to reality. We jump to the Amalgamated Sanctum, where Strange Fate is ordering his compound minions to seek out Access. They don't have to look far, as he arrives with Astral Steven, who is barely impeded by the X-Leaguers, and goes straight for their puppeteer and re-entering his body. Strange Fate begs for him and his universe to be spared, and in a green flash of light, we see the menacing mystic and his whole universe indeed live again, completely intact, contained within a magic vessel at the benevolence of Doctor Strange.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
He leaves the orb with Axel, as he belongs to neither universe, and the vessel instantly becomes part of him. With everyone back in their individual bodies, Batman gives the closest he can manage to an apology, saying that while he was kinda right about Strange being part of the danger, everyone owes him a debt. And then it becomes a thing with Doc giving credit to Access, and him giving credit to the heroes working together instead of fighting.
Which actually doesn't make any sense. By the time Strange Fate turned up again, everyone barely had time to react before becoming his goon squad. In fact, the only Marvel DC team-up that proved helpful to him was Spider-Man and Soups in the first issue.
Echoing that spirit of cooperation, Cyclops and Superman shake hands, hoping their next encounter will be on better terms, and Access leaves to return the League to their rightful universe. Then, an undisclosed time later, is seen having a snowball fight with Caitlin Fitzgerald, the woman he rescued from Venom in issue 1. Unable to get into details as to where he's been, of course. And so the comic ends with a dive through a sewer grate that then resembles outer space. As Access narrates, he has a feeling the current normalcy isn't going to last, but is eager to see what happens next.
Like, never being seen again. So that was All Access, and as a follow-up to the Versus storyline, it had its fun moments, a bit of closure, but felt very small scale by comparison.
It's not at all a bad idea, someone wanting the amalgam to return and endure while taking action to that effect. But there's a lot about it that didn't really make sense, since they didn't bother to explain how a fragment of strange fate could have lasted after the universes separated. Maybe if they had a flashback panel saying he cast a protection spell that could have left him in either Mystic Doctors and it happened to be Steven, and his influence could have been used to explain why Jubilee was hanging out in the same place as Access at the same time, beyond sheer coincidence, but that wouldn't really explain how she recognized someone she never met. And I guess Strange Fate's supposed to be at least as powerful as the Spectre and the Living Tribunal, since they're the ones that managed to merge the universes in the first place.
The redundancy got a little annoying too. It's one thing for each issue to briefly recap events from one or more previous installments, but Axel kept repeating his job description sometimes multiple times in a single issue. A job he was pretty bad at.
I thought the art was fine mostly, but there were moments where Axel looked just downright silly or stupid. And I'm a big Batman fan, as you know, but he seemed a bit overly capable here. He somehow knew a way to take down a villain he's never met, and took 2 blasts from Cyclops, who's a guy that can knock out a mountain if he wanted. I'm curious, did Access ever mention that Doctor Strange was a good guy? If so, why did Batman decide to crash through his window?
I'm Batman.
And there really wasn't any closure with Ming. She just runs off, we never see her again, and the comic concludes with Axel hanging out with Kate, a woman he called gorgeous and showed interest in him. So I guess we have to assume there was a formal breakup. Either that or Axel's a two-timer.
Overall, this was a nice callback to the Versus story, with a dash of new amalgamations, and there was never really anything I saw wrong with the art. The story just seemed a lot less polished than its predecessor. However, we're not quite done. When this story came out, there were more #1 issues of Amalgam Comics, and we'll take a look at the 3 I have next week. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.